Okay.
Yeah, and then you have something prepared already, or
What do you mean? No,
like
everything's as it is.
okay.
I think we're live.
Yes.
So,
All right. There we are.
First thing I want to say, and just to make absolutely clear while we're on stream, while we're live, is I know that you know what you're talking about in a general sense. And I like your channel. I think your channel is excellent. One of the best, actually. I know you have. You've been doing it a little while, but not years and years and years. And you're not the most recognisable name in all of the YouTube production sphere, but obviously you're specialising in psytrance, which is a bit of a niche genre, kind of. I mean, it's huge, but it's not.
Yeah, it is. And then there's like different subcategories
Of course. Yeah, but that's what I mean. That's how it gets really nichey. But I just want to say straight up firsthand so that everyone can hear that I know that you get a very good sound and you're very technical. You know what you're talking about in a general sense. So I wouldn't be getting on a stream with a random person who left a comment. Someone said that on one of the posts. Oh, I hope you're not going to invite everybody to a debate who disagrees with you or something like that. I was like, no, that's not what this is. I have respect for this guy, so that's part of it. I mean, we've been a little bit feisty on the comments and things, but privately in email we've been very civil and very friendly, but it's still going to be entertaining, so let's get to it. So let's just start with the opening position. So what I said in my video that you responded to, go on.
Wait, you're muted.
How did that happen?
Did you press something?
Possibly. Check 1, check 2.
Yes.
You got me?
Yes.
Okay, maybe I got too far away from the microphone or something.
Yeah, no, it's saying the internet connection is unstable, so maybe that's the reason why it dropped out.
Well, you can keep me ahead of that in case there's issues. Should be all right. We've got a good connection here, but nothing's 100% reliable.
It can be on my end, the connection. My connection isn't that stable, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
I have, one of those 4G modems, so every once in a while it just picks up a little bit.
I see. So what was I saying?
Starting positions. But maybe there's something that I should say first is you
Go ahead.
praised me a little bit there, and I really appreciate that. I also want to say it's the same for me in terms of the respect I have for you. I want to show this a little bit later because I actually went and checked back, but I found this specific article, which has the article that you wrote about 7 years now
Which
on
article
the same
was that?
topic.
Oh, really?
On the same topic, yes. So this is the truth about filters. And this is where I first heard this argument. So that's something that I'll be referencing a little bit later in the debate as well, because that's interesting.
Fair enough.
But I've been reading your stuff and all of that, and I've been following you for a very long time, as you can see.
I didn't realise that, actually, so good to know. What I was going to say is this all came about because I posted a shorts video on low-cut filters, and my basic premise was low-cut filters do not save headroom. One of the criticisms I had from that statement was a few people said, oh, it's not about saving headroom, it's about saving space. And I'm thinking, wait, what's the difference between space and headroom? What are we talking about here? I think some people get a little bit confused about the terminology. And so when I say headroom, I kind of mean space. I suppose people talk about frequency masking, but if you don't have anything in that region to compete, then there's no reason why there should be masking. But anyway, let's not get too technical on that point.
Just to clarify, you mean specifically the low-cut filters that people tend to set under, for example, the fundamental of a sound, or under the part where the frequency content really is. You don't mean where you're actually cutting out like a large amount of frequency content, right?
I didn't specify, but what I'm assuming is...
Because in the short you showed at 10 hertz, 20 hertz, 30 hertz, you give those examples for frequencies.
But I
so
also
that's kind of where I get that from.
Also, I said whatever frequency that you deem sensible. Because what I hear a lot of, the position that I hear a lot is that you should cut anything below, say, 20 hertz or 50 hertz or even 100 hertz, some people have said, or even 200 hertz, people have said, on a particular type of sound or in a particular type of genre. And my argument is, I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying be aware that there is a headroom cost to that. There are other costs to it, actually. Yeah. That's a separate issue. But there's certainly a headroom cost to it. It will make your overall mix quieter. Somebody else also had a comment, said, what about if you compress it afterwards? Which... that's an interesting, but let's not get too technical now. And you basically said, well, I don't want to paraphrase you, but I don't have the comment in front of me now, but something like that it was a disingenuous example to use a sawtooth as my example,
yes,
because it's not a real world sound.
Well, I need to be a little bit more specific on that, because I did a little bit of like extra thinking that you always do, you know, when you get into the shower after you had an argument with someone and then suddenly all of the things that pop in your head. What I came to the conclusion is that the saw wave, which you also used in this article, and that's why I showed it before, in the same article 7.5 years ago, you used the exact same sound, a normal sawtooth wave.
I didn't remember that at all. I've done so many articles. Yeah, I couldn't tell you what I've done. That's interesting.
And the reason why I bring that up is because a saw wave is what's called a minimal power wave cycle, which means that for the phases that you have and the volumes that each harmonic has, you arrange those phases in such a way that the waveform is as low in volume as you can be. So any phase change to that waveform is going to make a louder waveform.
Okay.
But not all waveforms are that minimal power. If you have a different waveform, then you might shift the phase in such a way that you actually get a quieter waveform.
Okay, but now we're talking in the realm of wave cycles, because that theory is all well and good, but when you go to something like a vocal or a drum, it kind of doesn't matter, because a vocal or a drum could have a saw cycle within the overall complex waveform at some stage. Do you see what I'm saying?
That's true.
Because they're complex
waveforms. But you cannot guarantee that that's maybe the loudest part. If that's sawtooth or whatever minimal or whatever wave that you have that could, through a phase shift, become louder, the other thing that it has to be is that it has to have a starting loudness that is sufficient so that it becomes louder than the original headroom that you have.
But again, I wasn't guaranteeing anything. I never said that all low-cut filters reduce headroom or cause peaking. You know what I mean? They don't cause necessarily a rise in peak level. What I said is low-cut filters typically will result in a higher peak level. And what I said was pick a sound, any sound. I used one example in my video because it's a 60-second video. Give me a break. Which I just picked. I thought, what would be the most obvious, easy thing that anyone could use? That's why I picked a sawtooth. Not because it's particularly common, but at the end of the day, a sawtooth is just odd and even harmonics. So I was thinking, well, you couldn't argue that this isn't the case because it's just odd harmonics if it's a square or it's a particular type of waveform that has maybe a DC offset or something. I mean, there are special cases. But what I said is so true. It's true even with a sine wave. You can take a sine wave, put a low-cut filter under it, put that sine wave at, say, 1 kilohertz, put a low-cut under it, and you will probably end up with a higher peak.
I want to test that theory.
Test it, please.
I don't think
test
that
it now. Test it now. Come on, as if I haven't tested it. Listen.
A sine wave.
As if I haven't tested that. Come on. I've tested it recently.
Well, I did a few tests for this thing as well here to prep. Let me move that out of the way. What I have here if you look at the spectrum, is
Yes.
basically a saw wave. You
Yeah,
can hear
that's one of
saw wave.
that's one of your funky been through M3 phase. You know, it's one of your fancy ones, isn't it?
It is fancy. What I've done is I've gone in here and I
3-4.
have hit
Are you
randomize
randomized?
all.
That's an interesting.
So we
technique.
get randomized phase alignment,
Okay.
which means that it's no longer the required phase alignment that it's minimal power. This is just a random waveform, and we don't really know what's going to happen to it until we test it.
That's smart. I like that.
So I have two loudness analyzers. This is the one behind the low cut, or the high pass, or whatever you want to call it. And this is the one in front of it. So we would expect this one to read higher, right?
Switch off the EQ8, please. And can you? Oh dear. Can you switch off the 8th band before you switch the EQ back on? Whoa. Leave the EQ8 off.
Okay.
Now, reset your meters, yeah. Play, then put the EQ8 on while it's still playing.
Now I need to reset it, because otherwise it's not going to update. It's going to read the old value from before I turn it on. If I update it, it's going to lower.
That's coming through really loud, by the way. Okay,
Did you hear what I said though? Did you hear my voice when I was speaking over it?
A little bit. I turned my speaker down because the buzz was so loud.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so what I had to do while I was performing that test was to reset it, so that it would start reading the new peak value. This is the one after it, so it's reading the peak value of this low cut filter, and this is lower than our initial one.
Yeah. Okay. But again, in my video, I said, pick a sound, any sound, pick any steepness of filter, 6 decibels, 12 decibels, 18, 24, whatever, and pick any frequency you like. I said it's most likely to result in a higher peak level. So giving me one example where it doesn't disprove what I've said. In order to disprove what I've said, you would have to use a lot of different source signals, or I suppose you could even just use this one and try different settings, not just one that you've pre-prepared.
Well, that's not really my argument. Because
Okay.
I'm not trying to really disprove that this can happen. Obviously, I agree with you that sometimes you can get a higher peaking waveform if you high pass
Okay,
or low cut.
sorry. I'm not saying
My
sometimes.
point is more that
I'm not
you
saying
cannot
sometimes.
guarantee that that's
I'm saying
often
usually.
going to be the case.
No, hang on. You cannot guarantee that will often be the case. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. In your short, you imply that most of the times it's going to be the case that the headroom is louder.
Yeah, that's
My
right.
argument is that I don't know that you can guarantee that it's going to be more often than not going to be louder. I think
Okay.
that has an equal chance of being quieter.
Okay. But you understand, in order to make that case, you need more than one example, because I could show you 100 examples where the reverse is true. Obviously, where the counterpoint is your point is true, where obviously you put a low cut on and the peak level goes down. Well, I could show many examples of that.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to see some. But first, let's
No.
test the
I'm
sine
saying
wave.
I'm saying
Let's test the sine wave
I'm saying
first.
examples the same as yours. Okay, test the
Okay,
sine
we
wave.
can try another one. So this is different randomization, completely different waveform. Still has the saw wave harmonics, but it's still a different waveform. Slightly
Okay.
lower.
Okay.
Also completely different loudness, which is interesting.
Right. Sweep the cutoff frequency, and see how many of those settings do not result in a higher peak. Okay, hold on.
Most of them.
Okay, yeah, but what you've done essentially, go back to the serum. This is quite clever. This is interesting. So take that same So what I'm thinking is there's a distinction between cutting the fundamental frequency and perhaps the first harmonic, which obviously tend to be the frequencies that take up the most space. Theoretically, I'll just say theoretically, it's certainly the loudest
yeah,
here.
that's how they are built. You can see the amplitude right here. Right?
There's a big distinction between doing that and putting the low cut below those frequencies. So the example I gave with the sine wave for you to try is putting the sine wave at 1000 hertz.
Okay, let's
but whoa, go back to that one. Go back to that oscillator A and whack the pitch up, say 2-3 octaves, and try again.
It's still lower.
Did you reset it? Did you reset it? I didn't see.
Reset.
Okay,
Reset.
yeah, but you've still got your cutoff above the fundamental frequency.
.3, but still.
Take it lower.
Let's take it lower. In this case, yes. In this case, it goes higher.
Take it lower.
So here, you have a phase shift that is.
Shift it a little bit lower, just a little bit, Just go inches each time. What do you think?
Quieter again. What I'm thinking is that because of the phase rotation graph, right, that goes up and then goes up like this, you essentially have a 50-50 chance of it shifting the phase in a way that it makes it louder, and a 50% chance in the way that it makes it quieter.
Yes.
The reason why I think that it doesn't work with a sine wave is because a sine wave is one harmonic, right? So changing the phase of that one harmonic relative to nothing.
That's just theory. Look, I'll tell you why it does work with the sine wave in a moment, but in my example in the shorts video, I didn't just take a plain sine wave playing one frequency. I deliberately played up and down the scale because then you have different interactions between different harmonics, different fundamentals, and the cutoff frequency. Do you understand? That was how I increased the likelihood of reaching a higher peak, because that is more,
because then the notes are just summing, right? If you play multiple sounds at the same time going up and down the scale,
no, it's one frequency, it's one frequency at a time.
Okay.
But some of those frequencies some of the notes would not be result in a higher peak with the low cut, and some would. So by playing more notes, it increases the likelihood that one of them will cause a peak.
Yeah, and that's equivalent to setting different frequencies, because it depends on this filter cutoff point relative to the frequency that you play. Yeah. That offset is what determines the phase shift that happens on it.
Yes.
And then what you could say is that because the peak level is a maximum, once you go over the original, then you have hit a new maximum, and therefore it will continuously stay, right? Even if that peak only happens once, and in all other cases, with all other notes that you play, it becomes quieter, you still are going to overall peak louder. Yeah, so in that case, maybe you could argue, so that it's a more likelihood chance.
Right. So my point is, if you have a riff, if you have a chord progression, if you have a vocal, most of these sounds, they're that complex. Even drum sounds, for the most part, they're that complex that they are likely at some point for one cycle, close to the top, to cause a peak. I mean an over, you know what I mean? I shouldn't say peak, you know what I'm talking about.
Going above the headroom of that it was before that filter was applied.
That's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah. But that makes it a little bit harder, in the sense that at that point you're talking about examples so broad that it's hard to say anything with certainty.
Yes.
It may be the case that what you're saying is correct, that for that one peak it becomes louder than the original, but the overall volume, like if you look at overall level, it may become a lot quieter.
Definitely.
Because all other notes interact differently with the phase shift that they're getting.
Definitely. But hold on, this is the point, because if we say that the likelihood of each cycle being higher or lower is 50-50, that doesn't mean, unless you have a single cycle playing for the whole duration, that doesn't mean that there's a 50-50 chance of the peak going over. Because if you have 60 frequencies in succession, for example, then it's 50-50 for every one of those 60. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, there is a prerequisite to that, in the sense that, say that you have something like a drum loop. A drum loop is going to have a bunch of transients, and then it's going to have a lot of cycles which are very, very quiet. In the quiet ones, even if you change a phase shift that makes that quieter one louder than it was before, it may not be louder than the loudest part of the drum itself. So therefore it would not contribute to higher headroom.
Yeah, now we're getting a little bit too theoretical for my liking, because as you well know, it comes down to, you've got to test it. You've got to test it. So I think we agree on one crucial point here, which is that you can't be certain either way. We agree on that?
No. Yeah, I agree on that.
You can't be certain. It's possible, and I did say that in my video, it is possible that you will save headroom. What I said is it's unlikely, and I was referring to a typical instrument, not a test tone as such. And the reason why I used that tone is just because it's easy for people to try. And my expectation was, and what my challenge was for people to go and try it in their music and see if they saved headroom or lost headroom. And what has been my experience working on other people's music, whether I'm teaching them or I'm doing a mix down for them or whatever, is removing the low cuts is often a way to save headroom. And it doesn't harm the mix in any way. It doesn't cause issues for the kick drum or the bass or the sub. Typically, everything sounds better if you remove the low cuts. And I'm not saying that as a guarantee. It's just a generalization. You have to test.
Yeah, what I think what the main takeaway from this should be is probably the fact that it's so dependent on the situation that you just have to apply it. And I think my main problem with the short was that message didn't come across.
I only had 60 seconds, man. Come on.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's the problem with shorts. I record something and then I see back in the timeline once I get to edit it, and it's 1 minute 40 seconds, and I'm like, oh, I have to cut so much stuff from it. So it's difficult to get everything across that you want.
Have you seen my longer video on low cuts? I did a few years ago.
No, I haven't seen the video. As I said, I was familiar with your work through the article,
Computer Music Magazines.
And now I saw it reappear on the short, so that's why I decided to message.
So I'll tell you what I'm thinking. First of all, it's interesting the point that you make about the sawtooth, and it's interesting to think about the fact that my example in the short was, in a sense, what word can I use? Likely to show what I wanted it to show, because I used multiple notes, which I wasn't thinking that way when I put it together, but now I'm a little bit more conscious of that fact.
And in your case, because the saw wave in particular is minimal power, right? So any phase shift that you apply to it makes it a louder sound. That's the reason why I mentioned like disingenuous. I thought that because I saw it in this article and I saw it the same way in the short, that you chose the saw wave specifically for that property. So that's why the disingenuous. Listening to it now, I don't think that that's in order here. I think that those words then were like wrong, right? Because it just seemed like an example that you chose just kind of because it was clearly available to everybody, right?
Yeah, but the point was not, look, I'm proving it here with a sawtooth. My point was, go and test this. Go and try for yourself, guys. Go into your music, actual music, not test tones, but music, and put low cuts on and measure.
It would have maybe been more interesting to see this effect than with something dynamic like a drum loop.
I did that in my longer video. In my longer video, I did like shelves. I boosted shelves, low shelves on hi-hats and snares and everything apart from kick and bass. I think it's been a while since I made the video, so I don't remember the specifics. I just boosted the low frequencies instead of cutting them, and showed that it doesn't really affect the kick and the bass to have all that extra low content in there. It's like, it's been this thing that gets circulated, like everybody thinks, oh yeah, secret pro tip, just cut all the lows out of everything. But I think that generally it causes more problems than it solves. Although I should caveat that by acknowledging that I do use low cuts, of course. Not that much, but I do use them. I certainly would use it more for creative purposes, like for, you know, an effect on a synth, or for like a transition, or, you know what I mean, for something that's supposed to sound interesting, where I'm not really bothered about headroom. Or I would use it correctively if there's like literally a DC offset. Of course, just use a low cut filter, and that will actually save headroom. And I think that's where the myth comes from. I think in the analog days, when it was typical to have a DC offset at various stages in the chain, it was prudent to use a low cut filter to keep your headroom under control. Otherwise, those DC offsets would stack up, and you could end up with a whole mix that's off center, and of course that would not that wouldn't translate well. You'd be better off low cutting to get rid of those DC offsets. Kind of.
Well, I can give you more recent examples.
Go for it.
Like in Psytrance, you've probably seen, if you've been watching a few of my videos, that especially the synth sound design can be very extreme of what we ask from the synthesizer.
Yeah.
In terms of very strong setups for FM, a lot of very high resonance peaking, a lot of distortion usually on there. All of that stuff can contribute to a lot of rumble, like actual noise being present in those lower frequencies.
Yeah. This is why I said on the comments that I would school you on Psytrance, because I think that some of the things that you're doing there are needless. You're causing problems that don't need to be there. And I realise that just saying that vaguely, how much time do we even have left? Yeah, 15, 20 minutes-ish. But look, I watched your video about, it's a title something like, Have I Revolutionised Psytrance Bass Design?
Yes.
Something like that. Great video, by the way. I'm not knocking it, but I watched it, and I was kind of, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I was kind of giggling to myself, thinking, why do you need to put that plugin on there when you have a wavetable synth? Because you could obviously just create the wavetable with the phase stuff already in it. I realise for the rest of the audience this is seeming a bit abstract, but the idea is you came up with this way of sweetening the sound of a Psytrance bass, and it sounds great, don't get me wrong, it sounds great, but there was a cost to that, which was that you were getting a lot of, would you call that post-ringing?
Yes, that's post-ringing. It's the idea that the filter extends certain frequencies in time because of the way that they're shifting the phase. Yeah.
So, and that was then meaning that you needed to take a whole heap of extra steps, but you don't get post-ringing if it's baked into the wavetable. But I only realised today that you have another video from 3 months ago where you actually did that. So I thought, I'm going to show him.
Another one after that, that's even what I did for the last one.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it.
I took that idea that you saw in the last video today then. Yeah. And I turned that into, let me turn on the...
For anyone watching who hasn't seen Projector's channel, definitely check it out, because even if you don't do Psytrance, you should definitely get into some of the techniques that he talks about.
I have this thing, which is essentially the same patch, only with this interface language here. This is from the Melda stuff. Melda is hugely powerful.
Yep.
And this allows me to... yeah, me too. So this allows me to have all of these different effects, and I can reorder them. So I can basically do all of my processing in here and then just create that as a patch. and I have all of the controls in here.
Yeah.
And this is also doing that with the wavetable technique. If I go into the generator, you can see it's using that same wavetable with the phase already baked in. So that allows me to just
I see.
not have to worry about the post-ringing.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so how I did it, let me see if I can share my screen. I'll show you what I did.
Sure, sure.
Jump over to...
Because that's a good idea, because it does eliminate it completely, because you stop generating the node, it just stops making the wavetable.
Is my screen automatically showing, or do I need to do that separately? Oh, it's already... It's showing on the stream. Can you see the stream, or do I need to put it through Zoom?
I can see it on the stream, yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes, that's perfect.
So what I did, I took a sawtooth from inside Serum after I saw your first video, and I got the freeform phase on there. So the basic concept, and this should be, everyone should know about this. The basic concept is you stick this on extreme. I know you have another method for doing that. It's
yeah, I have a preset for it.
Turn off the drawing mode. Okay. Oh, I've just messed it up now.
Behind the stream, but that's okay.
Okay. So you pull this down to here, you pull this up to here. I'm not going to go into the technicals of it because I'm just trying to be quick. But the idea is this will give you, let's say, phase variations on a sawtooth. That's the lazy way of explaining it.
Yeah. You can essentially say that you can read the graph, right? It goes from -360 to 360. So that's the phase shift that it's going to apply to those individual harmonics. And you can see at the bottom there is the frequencies that it applies it to.
I don't want to get that technical for this debate, but yeah, I understand how it works. I'm just trying to get this across quickly. So that waveform there is obviously it's a sawtooth with high frequencies shifted up 360 and the low frequencies shifted back 360 degrees. So, but obviously, if you do that with the with the plugin running live, there's like a pre and post effect.
Yeah, I cannot hear it, but I can imagine it with the settings that you have now. It's kind of a zap into it and then out of it.
Yeah. So what I did is I stabilized that at various points on here and plonked that inside a wavetable. So now you don't need the plugin.
Well, yeah, the way that I did it is I made a long sweep going through all of the depth amounts, right?
Yeah. I don't think that's the way. I don't think that's the way to do it.
And then you can set the amount of processing that you want.
I tried it that way. I tried it that way first, but it's not as. I don't want to get too technical on this, but I tried it that way first, and I think that my way is slightly better. I had it stable at each point, and so I chopped a stable cycle out at each level. Do you understand what I mean?
Okay.
So here is the one. It's the 100 hertz. No, 100, not 100 hertz, 100%. So that's the waveform for that, and then I've got the tables all the way up to 1,000%.
Okay, yeah, that would be a normal kind of range.
Yeah, but what I did then, so if you wanted to do a typical psytrance kind of a bass, just chuck an envelope in here, something like that. Oh, I've already attached it. 16th. Oh, I haven't even got the right tempo or anything. Let me just chuck that at like 150. Is that all right with you?
Yeah, that's nice and aggressive.
So, can you hear that at all?
I cannot hear the sound. No, that's why.
Right. I thought it would be coming.
The stream is a little bit behind.
Oh, I thought that would be coming through my microphone, but never mind. So basically what I can do then is go to 1K to 2K, so I'll have a separate wavetable for that.
Okay.
And then 2K to 3K. And I've got it going all the way to 10K, which by that point it gets really kind of ringy, which doesn't sound nice in my opinion.
Normally what you can do is with the graph, if you want it to be a little bit smoother, and what I've done for the resampling as well is anything above like 5K is really unusable, right? because it's so lasery, and then it becomes too much. So instead of going 360 and 360, you go 90 and 90. So you get a smaller range. Then that you modulate through. And if you capture a wavetable from that by just modulating through the whole thing, then you'll get a stable enough.
No, that's why I stabilized. I didn't have it sweeping. I stabilized each discrete point when I sampled each cycle. That's how I got around.
Okay, so then what is the wavetable position doing?
It's all over the place, yeah. You mean the phase?
So the wavetable position is basically a capture of
can you see my screen?
The depth, right?
You mean like because it's up and down? Is that what you're talking about?
I cannot see your screen anymore. No.
Oh.
I see what the stream sees.
Oh, I see. Let me just share screen on.
Yes.
Zoom.
Oh yeah. Okay. Perfect. Then you can let the stream be zoom, and then it should still show our faces. Either way, right. Or do they not see the... Yes, perfect. So what is the wavetable position doing in this case? Changing the wavetable position, what does that change in the wavetable itself?
Oh, that's literally going to the next percentage.
Yeah, so the depth amount is going up there.
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I mean with...
but I have very high resolution because I've split these. So I have 256 captures all the way from 100% to 1,000%.
Ah, okay, yeah, you get more definition that way.
That's why I did it that way.
True.
Look, I tried this a whole heap of different ways, and there's no perfect way, as you probably know. I mean, I could have split it more. I could have gone to 500% chunks. But after 100 to 1,000, I didn't see that there was much point doing 0 to 100% because it hardly does anything. It's not really a setting that I would use.
Yeah, no, that's the lowest amount of phase shift. It becomes interesting from roughly like 200% up until like 800%. There you would want the most resolution, I think.
But I think it's quite nice, much higher, and you get different tonalities.
Yeah, that's usually a little bit more like a lasery sound. Unfortunately, I cannot hear it here, so it should be more of like a zapping kind of sound.
Yeah, and
it stretches them really out.
I noticed that the more kind of horizontal the waveform looks, the more you get like a thin sound with a low fundamental, and the more kind of vertical the waveform looks, the deeper the sound.
Well, this is basically the same effect that we were talking about before in terms of the high cut. The phase is just being shifted into higher and lower volumes.
I understand. I'm just explaining it in a way that it's easy for people to follow along. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I wanted to just comment on that.
In terms of
for a way to make it
in terms of practical use. Yeah. In terms of practical use, I think that's a nice, easy way to kind of get an idea by looking at it what it's going to sound like. And actually, when I played with that, there were two very cool sounds that I found that aren't strictly psytrance sounds at all. But one was, well, I don't know how well people can hear this. I hope people can hear this on the stream. I can't even see the stream chat. I should have thought about that. But I'm getting some very cool kind of old school Detroit techno house kind of bass sound.
I'll have to watch it back because I cannot turn it up because then I'll hear myself.
So that was one thing, and the other thing that I found is that it's pretty good if you stick it in unison. You'd need the random phase, and then you can do like progressive house type plucks.
Yeah, then you get that kind of intra-modulation between all of the different voices that you have.
Find some nice notes. way too sharp. I want to turn that noise down. And then it was nice to cycle through. Cycle through the different. You get different flavors
for it.
You get different flavors. So yeah, how do we end this? I think we're pretty much in agreement, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean it's maybe a little bit a disagreement on how the messaging of the results of what you kind of showed came across. But for the rest, I would say
what do you mean by
overall, that? Well, to me, it felt like it could use a little bit more of you should try the things before you draw the conclusion. It came across to me that you said like never use a low cut.
Oh no.
You should test it before.
Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah, but I did say I'm not saying it's impossible to save headroom with low cuts. I'm just saying it's unlikely. And the whole point of the video was to challenge people to test it.
Yeah. Well, I think that hopefully you did a good job on that, and hopefully people may have seen that in some cases it can help, and in other cases it will not help. Obviously, it depends on the type of music that you make. I know that I use it quite a lot because of some sound design techniques that I like to use, and there it actually removes the rumble that you don't want from that you don't want to use in the saturation that you're going to follow it with, or the reverb that you're going to follow it with.
Yeah, but hold on. So you understand, with a wavetable, you can bake the distortion into the wavetable as well.
But I do want to have the distortion maybe act upon, I don't know, a stereo sound.
You can do stereo wavetables.
Can you?
Yeah. You don't know that trick?
Well, you can use you can create different variations of the same wavetable and then make them stereo using the two oscillators.
That's not what I meant. I mean, with one wavetable, you can have, you can set it so that every other wave plays left or right. You change the pan position. I forget how you do that. Oh, well, yeah, you do need to use. So what you do is you have 64 tables play on A and 64 tables play on B, oscillator B, and then you pan them apart. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you reduce. No, did I say 64? I mean 128. You're halving your
half of the wavetable.
You're halving your wavetable. So you have left one, right one, left two, right two. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? So
I do understand what you're saying.
You can trick it to be stereo, basically, or just use two wavetables.
Well, what I meant to say is, for example, in a lot of ways that we do sound design, there's a lot of filter movement involved, and there's a lot of phaser movement involved. I would like to randomize each of those elements independent of, for example, the wavetable position itself, so that to get the maximum amount of randomness. So I set up a patch like that, and then I notice, oh, this patch is generating a lot of rumble at 40 hertz, which I don't want, because I'm going to distort the sound later, for example. And then those frequencies become a problem, because then they get so loud that they can actually start to ruin the space, as you would say, that the kick and bass has.
I understand what you're saying. I would still insist, and I don't really have time to go into, it's very abstract, very specific, but I would insist that most of the time there'll be a way to wavetable it, and then you don't have that issue. I saw one of your sound design tutorials, which was a good one, by the way. And again, I'm not knocking you. I want to just say this. I'm saying this with respect. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, I know something you don't know. Because guess what? I know things I didn't know last week. Does that mean I was an idiot last week? No. And I learned things from your videos. So, respect where it's due. But what I'm saying is, there was a video you did where you had like a band pass or a notch. I can't remember if it was a notch or a band pass. It was a while ago I watched it. On a saw, and you bend the source. It's like a typical sidechain.
Yeah, the squelch.
Squelch, that's the one. And you tried to get it to follow so that the pitch and the filter were in the same place. you could do that with internal resampling in Serum. Very easy. Very, very easy.
Yeah.
And then it's attached to it. And then whatever you do with it, it's one piece. And then you can squelch it up even more by using the warps, so the bend modes, and then you've still got the filters to play with, and you've still got the effects to play with. So there's just way more options if you do it that way. And at each stage, if say you use a warp and then you use filters, you could then resample it back into another wavetable that now has those changes in it, and then recycle the whole process. I'm going to do a video about that, actually, a proper video about that.
It is actually very interesting wavetable making. I recently released a pack of wavetables.
Here comes the plug.
So it actually has all of those effects that you're saying built in. It has one with like a phaser category, one with a flanger category, and it's right. You just make like 10, 20 of them, and then you basically have enough different tones for all of the sound design that you want to do. But sometimes when you're in that creative mindset and you really want to like sound design something, it's nice to have everything still laid out that you can go back into it and make changes to it. If you commit everything to a wavetable, it's sometimes like...
I have a workflow for that.
It's not exactly the way that you want it to be, and then you have to go back, and if you haven't saved it...
I have a workflow for that so that I would never lose each stage in the wavetable creation. So I'll do everything I want, and then I can go back to any stage that I want previously and redo or edit something and save a new wavetable.
Then you should include that in the video that you're going to make.
Of course.
That's nice information.
Of course, and it will solve a whole heap of problems because there's no post-ringing, there's no rumble below the fundamental frequency, and you have way more scope to then enhance the sound that already sounds good with the filters, with the effects, with your inserts, versus over-relying perhaps on those things early on in the process, and then causing the issues that you have to then go back and fix. And that's why I took an issue with your video from 6 months ago, because you were causing issues and then solving them. So you're spending most of your time solving the issues that you'd caused yourself. You see what I mean? And yeah, my principle is fix this stuff upstream, simplify the process, make it easy. It's a whole lot quicker. I mean, it's a lot quicker and it sounds better to use a wavetable than to have...
Once you have the wavetable, yeah, of course.
Of course, well, yeah,
it's not... just get you cleaner results, and then... but you need to make sure, obviously, what you've done with your technique is that you have a very precise range of values. It depends a little bit on your workflow. I have a little bit more of a bigger range of values so that I can try different amounts of processing. Yeah. Sometimes I'd like to go very process baseline. Sometimes I like to go very unprocessed or with very little phase shift. I'd like to be able to test that all in one with just like one dial, right? So my workflow is a little bit different.
So what I do
for that video specifically, the title is something like "I may have revolutionized Psytrance baseline."
Yeah.
And the reason why that may is important is because that was very early on in the part where I was just experimenting with that particular plugin.
I just want to reiterate, I respect that video. It's a good video. Just to put that point out, I respect you and I respect that video. It's a good video. It was interesting. You got a great sound. There's no denying that. The only thing I found was just that it could have been done easier, which you discovered yourself anyway. You didn't need me for that.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, there's a level beyond that, which is do more with wavetables, basically. If you're going to be using Serum anyway, trust me, there's a whole heap of power there. I think as popular as Serum is, it is highly underrated. Highly underrated. As popular as it is, I realise how popular it is. It's highly underrated.
There's a lot of things that are in there that people never really explore, and that's really fun to come up with and stuff like that. So I would love to see a wavetable video like you're planning, where there's a whole workflow behind it, if that can speed up like any part of the process. Because one of the flaws that I have with Serum is that importing wavetables from other sounds, if you're not making it in the patch itself, you have the resample thing. But if you're making something outside of the patch, Serum can be a little bit of a pain to properly export a wavetable in. And for that, I've been using both Faceplant and Vital, and both of those synths are much more capable in that respect.
Okay, I don't use Faceplant, and I don't I have reservations about Vital. I have it and I use it and I like it. I don't want to get into slagging off Vital. It's good, but I still think there are major advantages to Serum. My point is that my experience is a little bit less with Vital than it is with Serum.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Serum's been around longer. I was day one with Serum, so
Yeah. I mean, it's been like 8 years, something like that it's been out.
more than that. Yeah, I think. Yeah, but Serum and we're like, well, I don't want to be like too much shilling for Serum.
Well, it's the same for me. It's actually the same for me. I mainly use Serum still. It's my go-to synth. For all of the same reasons. It's very easy to explain something in there, to explain a concept. One of its key features, which I really like, and this is maybe a little bit of strange sounding, but it fits nicer into YouTube Shorts. If you have the short format like me, where I have my own camera below and then the screen above, something like Faceband or Vital, it tends to be a little bit more horizontal.
Yeah.
So you have less space to actually put the synth in.
That's interesting. I'm sure that's not what they were thinking when they designed it.
No. It's
Okay.
the kind of problems that you're only going to run into if you make your own content.
Yeah. So, what I would like you to do, if I can give you a task, is do what I said, which is test the low cuts in more realistic examples and maybe make a chart or something and test how many times does it save headroom and how many times does it not. Kick drums, bass lines, well, I mean, your bass lines are not normally like, you do a lot of one note stuff, don't you? Not always, but you do a lot of one
Not
note.
always, but
Yeah.
most of the time, yes, it's all monotone. And
Yeah, well, that changes things because then you are closer to that 50-50.
yeah.
But yeah,
I will do some experimentation and record some data and see what comes from it. Maybe there's a cool video to be made there.
shoot me an email.
I will. I have to go in half an hour. I'm doing my own stuff on my own channel.
Yeah.
I'll be doing challenge production, so everybody gets to produce along. Basically, I have this challenge setup where I have a beat, which is already created, and then you flip a coin. If you flip hat, as a viewer, you get to produce all of the even segments, and for the odd ones, there will be tails. You check all of the odd segments, and you just produce a little bit for each segment, and then together we'll make that into a track.
Nice one. I like that. Sounds fun. I love creativity stuff. Okay, cool. I'm going to wrap it up then. Thanks for coming on. And
Thanks for having me.
I guess we're not enemies.
No.
All right. Bye.
Just to people with a slight disagreement, maybe.
Yeah. Take it easy.
See you. Bye-bye.